It's been a long 10 weeks, and you think you're ready, and then it comes time to do this, and it's You got it, Curtis. You got it, man. And I thought I was able to do this without reading it, but here it goes. Hey, y'all. As you just heard, my name is Curtis. But what Jamar didn't say is that I'm a crier. I've always wanted to introduce myself that way just to take the pressure off of anything that might come up in a situation like this that might result in me crying. While preparing for tonight and searching for a definition for masculinity, this is what I came across. It's the definition that was generated by Google's bot, of all things. Masculinity is a socially constructed concept encompassing the behaviors, roles, and attributes associated with men and maleness. These attributes vary across different cultures and historical periods. Traditional masculinity is characterized by traits such as strength, aggression, and stoicism, while a more modern and healthy view of masculinity embraces authenticity, personal growth, and positive relationships. Modern masculinity also emphasizes attributes like courage, honor, and emotional openness. I have to give you those definitions because over the years, I've vacillated between both sides. And over the years, I've done my fair share of crying as I dealt with the hand that life has dealt me. One of the most destructive stereotypes associated with masculinity is that boys don't cry. I found this thought prevalent in my family, my friends, my community, my social circles, and even through the media throughout my childhood. And only recently, through therapy, have I discovered just how damaging it was and is. I may. This is for you. My first remembrance of being challenged on my tears came from my sisters. As a little boy of 7 or 8 years old, there was something about the Charlie Brown cartoons that used to make me cry. I remember I would cry every time I saw one particular episode. It was the show centered on Snoopy leaving Charlie Brown to go visit his original owner, who happened to be a little girl who was sick in the hospital. I cried when Snoopy left to go see her. I cried when Snoopy had to leave her to go back to Charlie Brown. But it wasn't just Charlie Brown, though. I would cry when Frosty I would cry when I would cry when Frosty melted at the I would cry when Frosty melted at the end of Frosty the Snowman. My sisters teased me about this relentlessly for years. My crying was also triggered by feelings of being unwanted, although I have no recollection where those feelings came from, because I came from a family that was relatively healthy. You know, they treated us with all the love and affection that we as children needed. But I also remember my mother uttering those words that so many black children have heard before. Stop crying before I give you something to cry for. It seems this went on till I was about 10 or 11 years old. By then, I had seen enough, heard enough, and experienced enough to know that boys don't cry. This doesn't mean that I was not still attached to the spirit within me that was emotionally tender. At times, I wanted to cry, but I knew that I couldn't because it would be seen as weakness. So I suppressed it. I internalized it. But as life went on, this would have its consequences. As I entered my teen years, whenever I was feeling emotionally fragile and thought I might cry, my softness hardened right along with my fist, and I lashed out in physical altercations at home and at school. When my fist could no longer protect me in the streets, I turned to gun violence. I knew I could never again cry because someone had used me as a verbal punching bag, making fun of how I talked, how I dressed, or how I felt. I could not allow myself to be that damn vulnerable. My consciousness would not allow me to speak of some of the unthinkable violence that I perpetrated as a young adult. I remember how challenging it was to always feel I had to hide that aspect of myself, that tender, loving side of myself, from friends, and especially girlfriends, for fear of what they would think and possibly turn into gossip. All of this was largely the result of suppressed emotional trauma for which a really good cry might have offered me relief. This went on well into my adulthood. I remember the change came when I met the woman I would eventually ask to marry me. Early in our dating, she had asked me to attend a self-development course called Phoenix 2000. There was so much that I learned about myself during that weekend. It was a 3-day series of seminars and classes which culminated in a closing event during which we were expected to say what it was we had learned about ourselves. I can't tell y'all that I remember what I said, but what I do remember is that I cried harder than I had since I was a little boy. I'm talking about one of those chest-heaving, snot-running, tears-falling type of cries. It turns out there was a moment of change for me. Here I was crying, not only in front of a woman I had only recently started dating, but also in the middle of a room full of strangers. That was the beginning of a quest to refine and redefine my own true self. It was a quest without name or definition, but I remember feeling so free. The way she and those strangers had embraced me showed that as a child, I had been taught incorrectly. I now knew that little boys can and should be allowed to cry, so that as grown men, we don't have to resort to violence because we lack the emotional wisdom about how to handle life's ugliness. My most recent tears came as a result of the death of my Uncle Jimmy. I remember going to him during a very turbulent period in my life about 15 years ago. I cried and I cried. I cried so hard I fell onto his shoulder crying. But rather than speak ill of my tears, he rolled himself into his bathroom, got some tissue, and brought it to me. My Uncle Jimmy went into the hospital August 25th and transitioned into the realm of the ancestors this past September 30th, one day before his 76th born day anniversary. There were times in that hospital as we reflected on the last 15 years we had spent getting to know one another that we both cried. This was my confirmation. From that day forward, I will no longer feel any shame in saying, my name is Curtis, and I am a crier. Thank you.